Greetings, everyone. I am Imperatus. This is going to be the inaugural stream for my channel. I'm joined tonight by Dok of the Comics Aficionado's infamy. If you haven't heard of that channel, go check it out. It's going to get plugged at some point, I'm sure. At least it better. Dok, how you doing tonight?
I am spectacular, brother. I'm not used to doing evening streams. I'm so used to being on with Wes on Thinking Critical and doing the Saturday morning kind of adult cartoons.
That's a good way to look at that, actually. I never even thought of that.
It is. It's like the old man version of Saturday morning cartoons. Instead of waking up and watching, Scooby-Doo and the Smurfs, now we're talking comics and, being old men.
I kind of miss Saturday morning cartoons to a degree.
I do too. I tried watching them because they technically still exist.
Well, yeah.
I tried watching them 8 or 10 years ago, and I was like, I have no idea what any of these things are.
Oh, yeah, for
and
sure.
it was so much like Pokemon, Digimon type, like the Americanized anime.
Mm-hmm.
I was completely and utterly lost, and I'm like, it's not as fun.
No. I mean, people make comments like, oh, well, cartoons in the 80s were just about
selling toys.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
And it was. You can't really say that it wasn't, but there was so much more to it than that.
Yeah, there really was. I mean, look, they did make a substantial effort to actually create stories. And now, did they was it absolutely an opportunity to plug whatever new toy line they were launching with,
for sure,
work it into the series? Oh, hell yes, they did.
And don't get me wrong, there were also toy line or cartoons that were very much so specifically for selling toys.
Oh yeah.
A new toy line would come out. Next thing you know, you get a cartoon coming. They try to launch a new cartoon series and last a handful of episodes, and it just never caught on. Meanwhile, the toys did, but the cartoon didn't.
Yeah.
Or vice versa in some cases.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think of some of them that really didn't, like Mask.
Yeah, the toys were more popular than the cartoon for a lot of people.
Yeah, the toys were much, much more popular than the cartoon.
We're pretty cool toys, though.
They were. I mean, come on. It's not like it was kind of halfway between G.I. Joes and Transformers.
Yes.
I think the only thing that hurt things like Mask was the figure size, because it was so different from like that 3 3/4.
Yeah.
I think they were 3 3/4. Whatever they were, somewhere between 3 and 4 inch, the GI Joes. If you could have stuck your GI Joes in a friggin' Mask car,
oh yeah,
people would have like that shit still would be selling.
Yo, yeah, for sure. I got a buddy of mine who collects toys and does custom work and all that kind of stuff. And we talk about things all the time because we're me and him are the same age. And we grew up in that era of like, I'm a mecha enthusiast. You're a comics aficionado. I'm a mecha aficionado. Like one of my hobbies is I build Gundam models.
Oh, dude, one of these days I'm gonna have to have a conversation with you because I might want you to build me one.
Sure,
I will. I swear to God, I will. I've always wanted one because, like,
they're the easiest build in the world, dude.
I know, but still, I am not.
Well, let me take that back. I wouldn't say they're the easiest, but there's no glue, which is always nice. Everything's snapped together and they're all articulated. Now it all depends on which one. You have what they call high grades.
All right.
A lot of like the arm and leg parts are hollow. There's no frame in there. Then you go to what's called master grade, which is a bigger size, but has a complete inner frame that you build and then slap all the armor on.
Okay, so it's got like a full skeleton inside, and then like an exo
kind of
skeleton.
Yeah. Then you have what they call real grade, which are the same scale as the high grades, but are built like the master grades with an inner frame. Then you have what they call perfect grades, which are 1/60 scale, so they're usually a minimum of a foot tall.
Okay, I can get behind this.
Usually, the cheapest one that I'm aware of is about $130 if you can find it anywhere.
All right.
and to go all the way up to one my buddy wants to do. The model by itself is 250. The LED kit is another 150, and the option parts are another 100.
Okay, yeah, you can't see me right now, but my eyes got pretty wide there. But I am, you know what? I could get down with that. I mean, look, I'm a little bit of a statue guy, not a huge
Right.
statue guy, but I
Not
like
not to
the
interrupt.
yeah,
Could you vamp for me for 2 minutes? Someone's
yeah,
at my door.
dude, go for it.
Thank you very much. I will be right back, sir.
Yeah. So hey everybody. Um, no, I have liked statues. I know Imperatus is not here right now, but they were I like statues and I like toys. Thing was, I was terrible with um building like model. I tried doing like the model car thing when I was a kid. And I was terrible at it. Then again, I guess I was trying to paint with those little tiny jars that had like the paintbrush in it, and then you try to do a paint job on a metal, you know, toy model car, and can't exactly get a very flat finish on that. So no, the I do like statues, and so a Gundam would be dope. I've seen so many well done Gundams. I don't know about any of you guys that are in the chat. If there's really anybody even in the chat right now, if you are, say hi. Um, we're gonna basically it's just so you guys know we're doing this completely free form. There is no structure at all to this. There is absolutely no topics to that we're going to be hitting. It's just going to be whatever stream of consciousness comes to us, and we're going to just keep going. I believe we will be having and getting joined by one more person in a little bit. So what do you guys out there in internet YouTube land want to hear about? Because we're down to talk about absolutely anything tonight. Right now we're talking Gundam, and this is completely foreign territory to me because I am not very much of a anime or manga guy. I know that always seems to piss people off, but you know, I don't know. It never really spoke to me. Now, granted, I've watched a couple of I think I did really enjoy Gundam Endless Waltz. I tried watching some of the Mobile Suit, but I don't know. The Mobile Suit ones are too brown, too tan, too olive drab. I always like the more colorful Gundams. So I don't think that there is anyone in the chat at this moment. Well, you guys are no fun at all. Let's see if we can get anybody to come into the chat tonight. If Twitter decides it wants to actually function this evening. All right. So, well, right now, Imperatus is taking care of a visitor at his door. Hopefully, he's not getting like swatted, because that would suck. But I don't think there's enough people that we pissed off yet to do that. Give it time. But so yeah, we're just kind of talking Gundam right now. Once Imperatus comes back. All right, we got a couple people watching. Is there any topics that you guys were really looking forward to us hitting tonight? Because as I said earlier, this is just going to be very, very free form. We're waiting for one other person to join us. Nickweiser is going to be joining us.
So sorry about that, Doc.
Oh, dude, don't even bother, man. It's cool.
I really don't mind doing work for this particular friend of mine because he always takes care of me.
Yes. That's
and I don't even have to tell him what I want in whatever. It's just, oh, what about you? Do what you think is right.
Yep. And he always treats you fair.
Yep. But that's why he also has me on pretty much beck and call tech support for his business. So
yeah, that's one way of doing it. I always just trade people in favors.
So pretty much, yeah. There's a lot of that too.
Yeah, I got enough favors stacked up to between friends that put it this way, I'm pretty sure that if I move again at any point,
you have movers to help you.
No, I don't even have to lift a finger. I don't even have to pack.
Oh wow.
And be like, all right, you guys are coming here, you're moving the couch, you're packing this room, you're packing that room, you're all moving this.
Right.
You owe me money, so you're buying the U-Haul.
Yeah. You owe me less money, so you pay for the pizza and beer.
And somehow I'll manage I could probably do it without even lifting a finger.
So from what I know of you from listening to Comics Aficionados, that got me through a lot of my Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon, I should say, work shifts.
Yeah, it's always, you know what? It's even good on delay. That's the one thing I've liked.
Yeah, it's one of those things you can listen to live or a couple hours later, and
yeah,
same. You know, I always appreciated your takes as well as Pele's when he was on there.
Yeah, Pele and Wes had a little bit of a falling out. So
I wasn't going to actually ask about that, but there you go.
Oh no, it's fine. I don't know if there's any hard feelings. I didn't want to get in the middle of it.
I mean, the one thing that
I'm still friendly with both.
Yeah, as I probably would be myself if I knew them.
Yeah.
Personally, anyways, I follow both of them on Twitter.
Yeah.
But, you know, then I saw him bring in Nerdette. I went, you replaced Pele for her?
I like Nerdette, even if she's wrong, like always.
I don't think she's a bad person, but it's like,
I think she's a wonderful person. She just is very wrong. But so's Jimmy, and I love him, and he's always wrong.
Yeah, and what's even scarier is he seems to be one of the nicest people in the world too.
Oh, Jimmy is quite possibly the nicest human being I have ever met.
Is he Canadian?
No, he's from,
because he comes across as so nice. He's Canadian.
No, I think he's from like one of the Dakotas. That's why. Which is basically like South Canada.
Yeah, I mean, because we're both from the Northeast. Me a little bit more so than you, so you can only imagine what a New Yorker's attitude about some stuff is.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, we use fuck as a comma.
Yes, exactly. And I'm a Yinzer, so we're somewhere between Midwest. We're not Midwest, but we're also not East Coast. We're kind of
it's almost like Cleveland's kind of the same way too.
Yeah,
I have friends in that neck of the woods, and I've been there a couple of times, and it's just like, I don't know how to feel about this. It's kind of Midwest, it's kind of up north, and it's kind of what the hell?
Yeah, like we'll tailgate you at 90 miles an hour on the Parkway, and then when you move out of the way and we pass you and you honk at us, we'll just kind of wave and smile and like apologize.
Yeah, whereas you do something like that in New York, you're going to get flipped the bird at the very least, or maybe pennies chucked at your car.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we're weird. We'll do rude shit and then we'll apologize for it.
Yeah,
like it's strange.
So as I know of you from the Comics Aficionado, you're a huge X-Men fan.
I am.
That's kind of one I always preferred team books when I was a kid.
Same.
I always felt you got more for your money in the book.
Exactly. You got
more heroes for your money. And that's how I also got introduced to a lot of heroes that didn't have their own books. Like
they couldn't really carry their own books.
Yeah, true. I mean, I like the character, but there's a reason why I was Captain America and the Falcon.
Yes, exactly. Because you needed, like, Cap by himself was a little bland.
Yes,
I mean,
especially back then.
yeah, I mean, in the 80s and 90s, I mean, as good as uh uh oh god, what the hell was the name of the writer on that? He wrote it for friggin' ever. Um Regardless, as good as it was, I mean, we eventually got to the point of like NFL Super Pro Cap and then Cap Wolf.
Oh, I forgot all about that.
Yeah, like where he was wearing like that exosuit that made him look like NFL Super Pro, and
Yeah, I completely
then he
forgot about
turned
that
it.
one.
Then he was a werewolf for a while. Like, I mean, it
That
got
ranks up there with Frankencastle.
exactly so. But whereas like the X-Men, a lot of them, they really couldn't carry their own books individually, except for Wolverine, as we found out later. But they were all unique, and I think the appeal of it was the way that all the different personalities played off one another.
Right.
Yeah. So,
But you know, like I said, one of the first books I told you, I don't know if I said this when we were live or if we were in the back room,
yeah.
that the first book I can recall owning was Justice League number 200, or the only other possibility might have been a Conan the Barbarian comic.
Okay.
Because I was a big Conan fan, even as a wee little one. You know, and the only thing that people knew of Conan was the first Schwarzenegger movie, which was not geared for kids.
No,
not even slightly.
No,
but even as like a 6, 7-year-old or whatever old I was when I first saw it, I still saw it.
Yeah. That was, I think Conan was influential in that era on a lot of 6 and 7-year-olds, very unintentionally.
Yes. I mean, I grew up from there reading the actual Howard stories.
Yeah.
And then going from there, you know, like I agree with Razorfist, Solomon Kane is highly underrated.
Never read much of it.
The actual Howard stuff is really good. Even some of the comics are really good. Dark Horse has a nice collection of them. Like I just recently went back and read through the Dark Horse Conan stuff that they did. Really good, because they took the Howard stories, embellished them a little bit because a lot of them really were unfinished, and then added stories in between to link them up. They didn't kind of go off on their own thing like Marvel did after a while.
Yeah, I've never been a huge Conan fan. I appreciate Conan for what he is. And he's interesting, but again, like the sword and sorcery stuff, I never, you know, I'm a weirdo. I like superheroes, but you give me swords, sorcery, and dragons, and I'm like, this is fucking boring.
Well, you also bear in mind too, when I was a kid, there's a big rush of fantasy movies.
Okay, yeah. I mean there was as well for me. I mean, I'm only a couple. I'm 41. You're about 45, so
right.
we're not that
same gen.
Same gen. Like we're right at that tail end of Gen X.
Like because you get Conan came out, and then you had stuff like Dragon Slayer.
Yeah,
which is funny. Disney even touched with a 10-foot pole.
Exactly.
How dark that movie was. You had that. You had Legend.
Never-ending Story. Which to this day, like, traumatized like a billion children around the world about the horse in the
quicksand,
in the quicksand, or the tar pit, or quicksand, or swamp, or whatever.
Dark Crystal, which kind of scared the shit out of me as a kid.
Yeah, Dark Crystal. You had
Beastmaster.
Beastmaster. There was a bunch of Beastmaster movies.
I really don't recognize anything past the first myself.
Well, but I mean, they existed and they were made. Now, granted, they're all basically for like USA Up All Night.
Yeah.
But then again, there were more than one Porky's movie too, and we don't recognize anything after the first one of that.
I think the same goes with Meatballs as well.
Yeah, I think so too. Police Academy up through like 3,
maybe 4.
Yeah, there was a bunch of those that like serialized movies, but we just pretend like they don't happen. But no, getting back to the sword, it was a big thing in the 80s. It was like a big almost like revival of it.
Because I remember a longtime friend of mine was telling me, I remember when I was at his house one time, and he had all the old 60 printings of the Conan stories.
Oh,
all the old 60s copies from Del Rey, I think it was. And we started talking about it, and he was telling me he's like, you wouldn't believe how popular sword and sorcery and fantasy was in the 60s.
yeah. It's weird. I know when I think about the 60s, I don't think, I mean, just, from reading history on it, obviously I wasn't alive, but
Right.
reading history, watching movies, all I could think of was that it would be sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Right. Because we had a lot of influential fantasy and sci-fi come out of that period.
Okay.
Not as far as, because I believe Elric was done in the 60s.
Okay.
Elric of Melniboné from, I can't remember his name. Michael Moorcock.
Okay.
Which actually did have a crossover in the Marvel Comics with Conan.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of Conan. You know what? The Conan comics in the 80s, they did export a lot of villains, and it's surprisingly crossed over with.
Who would have thought a Conan villain would have crossed over with the X-Men a number of times now?
Yeah, what was it? The Adversary?
No,
or Shuma Gorath?
No, not even. I can't remember his name. At one point, he started turning New York City into like.
Yeah, I thought that was the Adversary.
No, it was a wizard. It was a 2-word name.
Oh, yeah. Son of a bitch! It happened in like the late 180s of Uncanny. Oh God! Now I'm gonna have to.
God bless Google.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's look at this.
Kulan Goth.
Kulan Goth. That's why I was thinking Shuma Gorath. Kulan Goth. Yes. Yeah. I mean, he kind of turned all of New York into a medieval village, and it was weird. Spider-Man's running around, but not really. He's more of like the jester.
Yeah. It was so strange. It was a very strange. It wasn't a bad story. It was just strange. And every once in a while, the X-Men would do something completely strange that I remember. One of the annuals. It was just its own. Like, that's one thing I used to love about annuals was it was a complete one-shot story, unless it was a part of an event.
Yeah.
Didn't tie in. Maybe it would tie into something that was going on in the ongoing. A lot of the times it didn't.
Okay. Yeah.
Kind of like when Storm meets Dracula in that one annual. That tied into nothing in the ongoing that I recall. It's been a long time since I've read that, but
it was a callback, actually, if I'm not mistaken, to around issue 160.
Okay.
Because Storm kind of almost became the bride of Dracula back then. Storm was always very front and center in a lot of the annuals, and I did like that. Storm is probably my second favorite X-Man.
Who's your first?
It's always been a tie. Well, it's Wolverine.
As is for a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly. My third is actually Cyclops. And you know what? I hated Cyclops as a kid. I was always a Havoc fan. I liked Havoc. I didn't like Cyclops. I thought he was too much of a stick in the mud.
I'm a little strange. Like, I always kind of liked Nightcrawler.
You know what? Wes is a huge Nightcrawler fan.
And I also became a fan of Longshot for some reason or another.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it was for me enjoying that character, but I did.
Longshot had this like wonderful naivete that was, I don't know, something quintessentially 1980s.
Yeah. Yes.
And then the amusing part is how Chris decided he was done asking Art Adams and Annie Nocenti. I can't remember who wrote. For some reason, I want to think it was Annie Nocenti that wrote the Long Shot series with Art Adams.
The miniseries.
Yeah, and they kind of had creative control over Longshot. So even though Annie was one of his editors, she had extra. Okay, yeah, she had extra control, her and Art, on what changes or significant changes that Chris did with Longshot. So he eventually got sick of it and wrote Longshot out and created Gambit.
Right.
To fill a very similar role and with a similar power set or like visual. But Gambit is so quintessentially 90s.
Yes. I remember everybody in the 90s like going nuts over Gambit. And welcome to the stream, Nickweiser. What's going on, brother?
Hello. How you doing?
Not sure if you and Doc know each other. So Nickweiser, Doc Nickweiser.
I have seen him on a few of the Thinking Critical streams. We follow each other on Twitter. I'm a fan of what he has to say a lot, so it's actually cool to be on the same panel with him.
Hey, and somewhere in the Philippines, ears are bleeding, or Wes's ears are bleeding.
Yeah, if he's well, let's see, it's 9 p.m., so he's probably just waking up.
That's a hell of a way to wake up with your ears bleeding because someone's saying good things about Doc.
Exactly. Yeah, I know. It's just gonna drive him nuts. Like, hey,
it's like, how did this happen? What's going on?
Exactly. The other day, I was trying to figure out a way to send him a super chat to force him to say Doc was right. Because I love the busting the guy's balls.
So. Sorry,
go ahead. No, go.
I was just gonna say, Nick. Yeah, you noticed you were, vibing along to the conversation there about the X-Men. What is your take on the X-Men, my friend?
Well, here I'm gonna have the rare hot take on the X-Men. I like them. I'm not like as gaga about them as a lot of comic book fans are, but I understand their cultural relevance and how important they were to comic books, especially in like the 90s, the whole Chris Claremont X amount of years era, and obviously with the 90s cartoon, how transcendent it was, Chris Claremont, Jim Lee, and of course, Wolverine. If there was a time in Marvel where Spider-Man was not the poster boy, at one point in time, it was Wolverine. So I'm not ignorant of the culture around the X-Men. It's just a shame that when the 20th century happened and they're making tides in the movies, Marvel Studios tend to get really shitty about it, which is just because I'm not as gaga about them, I still believe in the idea of respecting the characters. Right. Pretend if I was a writer at Marvel and I was writing, I don't know, Ghost Rider, and they for some reason pitched me if I could throw in an X-Men character, and they kind of assigned it to me, like just some character, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna make sure I write this character. I'm gonna make sure I nail the voice of the character and the likeness of the character. Still respect where that character came from for those fans who like that character, because how I feel about that character is neither here nor there.
Right.
That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, you're not the only one. I knew people when I was younger who they didn't dislike the X-Men, but it wasn't high on their list. They were more of a Spider-Man fan or a Punisher fan, or even the guy that I told you the story about that lived across the street from my grandmother, my uncle's friend, who'd let me read his comic books. And Doc, you'd appreciate this. So this is back when I was a kid, 80s and whatnot. The house across the street from where my grandmother lives in Long Island. Family lived there, pretty much the entire time my grandparents lived there. So their kids were friends growing up. My uncle's friend collected comics, and he's like, oh, your nephew's into comics? Yeah, you can come read mine. All just thrown into a box, not even a long box, just some cardboard box, no bags, no boards. And if you saw some of the stuff he had, you'd be like, oh, this motherfucker.
Yeah, no, you know what? Like 40-year-old Doc is sitting here going like, my OCD is kicking in. Like 10-year-old Doc, though, I was sticking 4 comics in one bag with no backboard because
that's what you had to work with. You didn't.
That's what I had to work with, and I'm like,
this guy had stuff. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm like, I'm not spending money on bags and boards. I need that money to buy more comic books.
And this guy had stuff like Iron Man #1, Submariner and Iron Man #1, the one shot.
Yeah,
and like all the giant size Avengers. Not that those are probably incredibly.
Yeah, they have a couple. They're worth a couple of bucks. Not as much as obviously giant sized X-Men #1.
No,
or giant sized Man Thing #1.
Is that up there?
No, it's not. But
okay. I was about to say,
there's a love for anything called giant sized Man Thing #1.
Yeah, I can see that.
Oh, I can see that. All right, it shows.
Or giant sized Wood God #1, because Wood God was also a thing.
Was it?
Yes, that was a character called Wood God. I kind of want to buy issue 1 of that too.
just to have it.
Yes, because it's a dude named Wood God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a buddy of mine. I don't really collect much these days. I just read, and usually I end up reading trades just because it's easier. And he still collects, and he buys a lot of slab stuff. And some of the stuff he gets, I'm like, I'm proud of you, brother. He's got a lot of great keys.
Oh,
Like he actually got himself an Avengers #1.
Well, I broke down about 2 years ago. No, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. Now I finally bought my X-Men one.
Nice.
I kept
raw or
putting that
slabbed?
book off. I bought it slabbed.
What kind of grades you get on it?
It's a 1.5, but it presents very, very well.
That's kind of like with my buddy's Avengers. It's like a 2 or something like that, but the cover isn't damaged, so it still, as you said, presents real well on the wall.
Yeah, the cover's detached, but when it's in slab, you can't tell. So I don't really care.
and it's X-Men #1.
Yeah, exactly. And that book is skyrocketing.
Yeah,
since I bought
the conversation me and him have had recently was he's like, I'm kind of pissed that I didn't jump on things when I should have, because now stuff is so completely unaffordable.
Yeah,
he's trying to grab some stuff too. I actually took some recommendations from the Slabbed and Raw show you guys were doing for a little while.
Okay,
and relayed that to him. Just be like, hey, keep an eye out for this. It's a character you like. Like he went and grabbed himself the first appearance of Sabretooth.
Yeah, that Iron Fist 14
sounds about right.
Yeah,
he's got Daredevil #1. He's got
that book was so severely undervalued for so long. That and when it finally got a little bit of, I guess, respect, it skyrocketed. That book went through the damn roof.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he got a good deal. I think he got a 5.0 for like $500.
Oh, who was it again?
A friend of mine that I know that's pretty much lives down the road from me.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, because there was a guy on Twitter that I'm friends with, that also picked one up by 5.0 for. I think he might have paid $1,000 for his.
Yeah, I think my buddy got this just before. Like when I say just before, I mean like a year or two before season 1 of Daredevil was even announced.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So he got it right before. Now he's looking for stuff like he's trying to collect certain appearances of Moon Knight.
Oh, that's what somebody had one of those things going on the other day with they were posting Mile High's sales.
Yes, I commented on what you said from 1980. It's like I'd love to go back in time with like $100.
Yeah, $100. That's all I need.
And hit up a comic store at that time. I mean, I've thought about that to a more degree. Like, why go back to the 80s? How about we go back to like the 30s and 40s? Let me go grab, Action Comics. Let me get like 5. Yeah, let me grab like 5 copies of that.
Yeah,
and, 5 copies of the first appearance of the Joker. And
5 copies of Tech 27. Aim for a 9.8.
Yeah.
Why not? You could have the only 9.8 action #1 on the planet.
Yeah. And every question's how the hell you got it.
Yes.
Because that would happen. Like going back and grabbing 10 giant size X-Men #1s, no one's going to think twice about that.
Yeah. Because there's plenty of
and for a long time, even as a kid, I can remember that book was only like between $25 and $50.
Yeah. Well, hell, I bought one. I broke down and bought one in like 2002. And it was after like the 90s spike on it.
Right.
And when the market was way down in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Oh, I remember that time period all too well.
I think I paid $80 for it.
Wow. And at that point, that was a known commodity too.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a 6.5.
Nice.
So it's nothing special, but
it's still nice.
Solid mid-grade, presents well, never been pressed, never been cleaned. And so it's the book that I bought. I just set it off for grading.
The I mentioned on one of Wes's videos, like it was one of the Comics Aficionados when you guys were talking about what happened in the 90s with the crash and everything like that. My comic had owned a comic book shop during that time period.
Oh,
He did not get into it for comic books.
okay.
He got into it because sports collectibles were doing the same kind of thing at that time period.
Oh, I remember that era with like the Billy Ripken fuckface baseball card.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Where they had it recalled. Yep.
So it was, and then when the crash actually happened, his store went away.
Oh, bummer, dude.
So, I mean, for a while there, he'd be like, here's my catalog. Do you want me to order anything for you? But at the same time, that's kind of what burned me out on comics. Not so much because he was my uncle and he lost his store. Image killed it a lot for me because they were hyping up these books and hyping up these books. I remember when like Youngblood came out and Wildcats came out. Stormfront came out at the same time too, didn't it? Or Stormwatch,
Yeah.
I mean?
Around there, approximately.
Yeah,
it was Spawn and all that stuff. And it's like, okay, these are okay. Why do I have to wait now like 6 months, it feels like, to get the next issue? And just killed all hype for me. And there was no...
I think it did for a lot of people. That's one of the reasons for the crash. Like, I mean, people don't want to accept it, but when you have all this hype for books and then the issue just, it doesn't come out and it doesn't come out. You're looking at 6 months down the line and then it finally comes out. How much of that hype have you lost? I mean, how many people, and this is before returnability or final order cutoff. So whatever you ordered when you placed your order
that's what you were getting and you were stuck with it. Yeah.
So it wasn't like 30 days out or 21 days out. I think it's 14 or 21 days out now. It is where final order is. And so you're sitting there going, how do I, I ordered this when I was selling 1,000 copies of it a month. Now it's six months later and I only have maybe 150 people interested in this. What the hell am I going to do with this other 850 copies? And that's why there's so many shops that are, you can go into some shops and go find like X-Force ones, like long boxes full of them.
No, Doc, I want to bounce off what Doc said, and that kind of reminds me of all the summer Marvel events from 2007 through like 2018. You would start off out like issues 1, 2, and sometimes 3 coming out on time. But then 4 through 8 became a whole ball game of just them constantly making the release dates like more spread out. And they would have to try to time out originally to coincide with the next relaunch until the next relaunch. And each time they wouldn't meet the mark. And like, I got the idea of like, want to have like a consistent writer and artist. That idea in theory made sense. But it also showed you they needed to plan better ahead to meet those type of deadlines, because I get some artists and pencilers are faster than others, but it's like they just think of themselves and just throw it together. And with the events, like, oh, we got to get another event going. We got another event. And the Marvel universe won't be the same again until the next universal event where it won't be the same again. And I can only imagine how much Marvel fans lost interest from events because of the constant delays. And it wasn't like they're doing anything until So I remember, dude, I was this comic store I go to out in my area back in 06 and 07. Everyone was talking about issues 1, 2, and 3. And then 4 through 6 was kind of getting decline. If it wasn't for the death that happened, no one would have talked about issue 7. That was the only reason people came back, but people had to be filled in on the gaps because there are people who were missing out on the issues in between 3 and 7, so they need to be filled back in. Like, they're all missing, and I think it was almost like they knew. I mean, obviously I can't prove it, and I don't have receipts to verify that, but my gut tells me that they knew people were losing interest. They need to find a way to bring them back.
Well, they started literally like halfway through the event when the delays started kicking in. Like literally coming up with new like one shots and like 3-issue miniseries that would be like tie-ins. And that's where we started getting like the crazy amount of tie-ins and one shots that you're seeing for stuff like the death of Doctor Strange and
All the X-Men events that they've
all
had
the
lately.
X-Men events, the like that Darkhold where it's just a bunch of one shots.
That turned out to be a big nothing.
Yeah. War of the Realms, it had a lot of those. King in Black had a lot of those that were just random one issue tie-ins that weren't even tie-ins in the regular series.
Yep.
I'm sure I'm not the only one too who misses the days of when they did events in the summer annuals and that was it.
Yeah, or just and they do crossovers across 3 or 4 books over for like 2 months.
Like Inferno.
Yeah, Inferno or Extinction Agenda. There was always a Spider-Man event that would cross over all 4 of his monthly titles.
Right.
And that was fine because you had only one office working on it. Now you have Civil War, there was every title had a crossover.
It was all hands on deck.
Yeah. And then whenever the delays started kicking in, you're like, okay, well, I can't hold my story until Steve McNiven and Mark Miller get their shit together and get this book out. And I think in Miller's case, it was literally get his shit together because I think that's around the time he got diagnosed with Crohn's.
Oh, Millar. Oh, yeah, you're right. He did. Carry on.
So I think I don't know if the delays were because of Mark or because of Steve, or a combination of both.
I think it was Steve. He's always made it he's been kind of vocal out there if you look for it that he's not the fastest penciler.
Well, he did.
He's not like Humberto Ramos or Salvador LaRocca where they could just hammer out issues like that.
Yeah, and I still don't think he was as bad as Barry Windsor Smith, though.
No, where Barry gets 1 issue a year. Whew. That.
But go on, Doc. Sorry,
you're fine. But yeah, so they started instead of doing tie-ins in the main title, instead of that, you would just have the random King in Black, Blade, or Captain America, 1 of 2. And you're like, so you're sticking the tie-in in a mini series / one shot that's everybody can skip.
I never understood why they didn't just throw them into whatever the continuity was at the time.
I think they were afraid that some of those books would, that the main event series would get delayed again, and it would kill all interest because Civil War did have that interest killer aspect, the same way that the Image delays did in the 90s.
True. I mean, in your opinion, have there been any good modern events? Most of the ones I've read, I've not been impressed with. War of the Realms was just god awful stupid. I already said what I said about 10 of Swords. That was just.
I didn't mind King in Black.
That one I heard was actually pretty good.
I thought King in Black was good. The only problem that I have with it is the same problem I had with Absolute Carnage before that, is you're taking the payoff from this story that had been going on and kind of marinating in Venom for a year or a year and a half, almost 2 years. You're taking the payoff of that and taking it out of the main book and making it a mini series. So you don't get the influx of new readers. It was building readership over time. And now if you're doing it, I think Absolute Carnage actually hurt Venom because they pulled it out of Venom, made it its own series, but then didn't have a resolution to it. And all it was a kind of lead in to King in Black. So it was more of an interlude story. And then they had more, then you had to go back to Venom. So I think people felt like they got let down and maybe they started dropping out of it. But if you kept that series in Venom, it builds the hype even more. So by the time you get to King in Black, and then you're doing that even in Venom too, now you can have all these other books for 1 month or 2 months just have a tie-in. I think you really draw your if you have because you had other characters in that. You had Wolverine, you had Spider-Man, you had Captain America, you had Iron Man, and you had the Thing. So theoretically, you could have tied in Cap, Iron Man, Avengers, Wolverine solo title if there was one, otherwise X-Men, Spider-Man, and Fantastic Four, into have them all with like 1 or 2 issues of tie-in, and brought all of their readers over to Venom. Instead they just came to King in Black, and then whenever that was over, they didn't bother to read the last issue of Venom.
Oh, I can see what you're coming from, Doug. No, that's very interesting. You know, here's the thing. You said earlier that with the ending of Absolute Carnage, it ended up just being an alluding to King in Black. And I'm thinking here, okay, so people are going to see Absolute Carnage as an event. And it sounded like Absolute Carnage didn't have any event ending. It had just the current arc ending. Am I correct in that assumption? It sounds really like that's what it was. And if they, now that I'm seeing what you're saying, that should have stayed as Venom, because then they would just treat it as the next arc ending instead of the big event ending. Because event endings are very different than what a regular arc ending is, that people get different perceptions based on the book that they're reading. And I can see where that frustration comes from. It sounds like for that reason alone, they should have kept it in the Venom book, because now people are going to get this whole perception. Hold on, where's the big grand finale? When really it was just the continuation of the same story that was going on in the Venom book to begin with.
Yeah, it was a little bit of like in music parlance, it'd be like a little bit of a minor crescendo. And then it brought it back down a little bit to start the build up again to King in Black, and that be the big finale. But now anybody that came on to Venom for Absolute Carnage and just went to Absolute Carnage, they're like, well, why am I going to come back? You fooled me once with no finale, no ending to your event. I'm not coming back for King in Black.
It's really odd how they do these changes, and they assume that the sales are going to automatically translate. Like, I'm sure you'll have your readers that are going to buy, who already, there'll be that certain percentage that will buy both the books, but not everyone can just do that. And I at my comic shop, I knew a lot of people who were, I guess you could say, were less satisfied with the second arcs around the Hickman era X-Men. And then right around the second arcs, all became that big giant Axisword, whatever that event was called. And they're like, oh, I'm already reading only 2 books, and now I gotta read all these other books. Like, not everyone can just do that. They're assuming that everyone can just translate that money. Like, it's one thing if you like add in like 3 or 4 books, but when you're assuming that it's 20, sometimes literally 30 or more, like, where do they get this idea? There's clearly like what's the word here? There's definitely thank you, a disconnect. You took the word right out of my mouth, between the people who are deciding these ideas versus the consumer fan base. And like, and I see the guys at the shop I go to, and they're not afraid if they got to pull something out. And the guy who runs the shop is totally cool that he gets it. He doesn't lecture or grieve with people by it. Sometimes he empathizes with it a little bit. And it seems like between the retailers and these big 2 guys, and sometimes even Image because of the release schedule, it seems like no one's on the same page with this. And no one wants to get on the same page. No one wants to answer the questions that need to be asked. Instead, they want to deflect from it and answer questions that don't exist.
That sounds about
par for the course.
Yeah, that would require, I think, a degree of self-reflection that the comic industry is painfully lacking or terrified of doing. It's a small industry. Everybody kind of knows each other. Everybody's working with each other. Everybody has worked with each other. Looking back and admitting, hey, we fucked up like a lot, is basically just saying, hey, why don't you fire us?
Yeah, really.
And they're not going to do that.
No, they're not. I seriously, I think some of these guys would rather get eaten by like a shark than to ever admit that they're doing any wrongdoing. And here's the thing. Now, here's my personal take, Doc, and you let me know how you fit. And you can level me. I'm not one of those guys where you had to always agree with me or even disagree. Just level me. I would like if some writer or penciler say, you know what? I messed this up. I should not have done this. Let's give this a shot again. I would at least say, you know what? Let me see what this guy's going to do. I'm not going to completely believe everything he says, but I will at least pay attention, see if he sticks to his words, and, try giving the benefit of the doubt instead of everyone just doubling down and just, not backing away from what they say. Like, I think I saw Jeff Johns right around Rebirth admit that the new 52 is a mistake. It was either him or Jim Lee that said it. One of them said it, and I couldn't believe it. It was just like, the second coming was happening. Like, did one of these guys actually admit to a mistake? It almost doesn't sound real. Like, I almost feel like I need to try to find that because it doesn't. It's even back when the pros, like the Marvel and DC guys, were all clashing with each other, taking jabs at each other. They still, none of them, even dating back to Clone Saga and beyond, no one ever admitted to a mistake. You still won't find someone made to the Clone Saga to this damn day. And I think I said either Jeff or Jim Lee, and I think Donnie Cates said stuff too when he got on Twitter about how he should not engage fans. And I'm like, I feel like we should see a lot more of that. And the fact that that's rare is very sad.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a lot of people would kind of, especially if it's like comic, if it's their actual product. If it's about what they're actually producing, like, hey, we did this thing with this character. It was a huge mistake. We're going to walk it back. And you would absolutely catch you would be right in the fans' good graces, the readership good graces. You would gain a lot of respect, I guess, from the readership.
It's amazing how far a little humility will go.
Oh yeah, a little bit of humility. Now, they don't have to be like, oh yeah, everything we did was wrong. They'd be like, you know what? There was a couple of things I think we shouldn't have done, or we didn't do that I think we should have done. Or we really missed this opportunity here. Like, I think if Marvel looks back at itself, like to bring up Civil War again, I think if Marvel looks back at itself and was honest, they could say that one of the reasons why, because you've had kind of a law of diminishing returns on events from Marvel ever since Civil War.
It's been an ongoing stream of them. You get what, maybe a month, maybe two of standalone issues, if that, and then it's right back into building up another event.
Well, I think, but the big thing that I think that they lost a lot of credibility from is that was kind of the big breaking point of where they kind of sold it as nothing will ever be the same. And yeah, they did have some consequences in that whole initiative
and then
thing,
Cap getting shot.
Yeah, and but even that, other than that, there wasn't really, everything was able to mostly go back to normal within a month or three of that event happening. Whereas I always thought that would have been their opportunity to go really big, really universe altering, and go like, okay, you had this big superhero conflict that the people sided with Cap and the government sided with Tony, and basically the country erupt into an actual civil war.
Right.
And at that point, the heroes have to recognize what part they played in it, in their petty bullshit, and actually work to put an end to it, to help rebuild a country, like deal with these civil uprisings all over the country. You could have done your initiative that way. It would have made sense to have a 50-state initiative after that. Because now you need somebody to kind of police this stuff in each state where all this stuff's happening. And Instead, we just got everything's basically the same, except for Cap's dead.
Right.
And
Tony Stark's a little bit more of a dick than he normally is.
yeah, exactly. And additionally, they also missed the boat in that by wanting you to sympathize with Tony's side of that argument, and while simultaneously making him actively act like a villain.
Kind of like what they're doing with the X-Men these days.
Oh yeah, I mean, you could see a lot of parallels in like storytelling and the ways that they've tried to, like, the stuff that is historically villainous behavior being done by heroes, therefore justifying it.
Right.
And then we started, in the last few years, starting getting the reverse, where reasonable words of normal people get stuck into the mouths of villains to try to disqualify or, I guess, void the validity of those opinions. Yeah, we saw it with the Jordan Peterson Red Skull thing. We saw it last month with friggin' Brimstone Love, who, by the way, shouldn't have been in that comic because Brimstone Love is not a mutant and he's from the 2099 universe. So I have no idea how he was even in this comic.
And they never explained it, of course.
No, not a bit.
Yeah, we like how this guy looks. We like his character. We're just going to drop him in. Like, huh?
Yeah. But so, they've gotten to the other end of that, but they missed that opportunity. And that's, I think, when people started losing their
faith.
Yeah, in Marvel or in comics in general.
Well, at first it started off as losing their faith in these big events, because I can remember, like I said, growing up, all these big crossover events usually happened in, as you said, in a certain select few books or across the entire line of annuals.
Yeah.
But after the event ended, not only did they still reference what happened, certain stories broke off of into
new titles, new art, new directions for existing titles. Yeah, you started having all that stuff.
Right. But now they just, when the event ends, it's just maybe they'll reference what happened. Yeah. Maybe.
I mean, half the time they forget about it as soon as it's over. Like, what was the ramifications of
like you said,
War of the Realms
or War of the Realms? Nothing.
I mean, what was the ramifications of Empire? Nothing.
I think the only modern recent event that had some ramifications was Spider-Man, with the whole thing going on with Kindred.
Yeah, that and that was, but that the only ramifications were in Spider-Man.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. No, Doc is right. It's like these events, it's one of the, it's like I said earlier, it's like it matters now until the next event, until next test. Nothing carries out into our books now. It's almost like there's 20 different continuity plays. It's almost like you decide what is and what isn't. That's a problem, because when you do that, you're saying that the stories essentially don't matter. I miss little things where you would see, like, I don't know, just pretend hypothetical scenario. You'd see some guy, some business guy walk in the office, like, hey, why'd that guy stumble into that sketchy building? Read this book to find out why. And that's when you knew, oh crap, that was curious. I want to go check out their book to see what's going on at that sketchy business. And that's when you knew continuity meant. It let you knew there was communication. It let you knew that, hey, this stuff matters. What's going on here is serious, and you should be invested in the story. And that is, it wasn't just about a good story with a lot of the Marvel DC book. It was about how connected it all was, and it really felt all connected. So it wasn't like it, and you could still do it till we can read these books on their own merits, but you obviously got to actually benefit if you were, reading the bigger picture at play. And that was such a cool payoff when that was happening. And I miss that so much. And obviously you guys are both, sounds like you guys know even more than me. I mean, you guys definitely know where that comes from. And it sounds like you guys miss it as much, if not more than I do.
Well, even some of these quote unquote events from back in the day that get all this love and talk about, they weren't even events.
No, they weren't.
They were just a storyline in the books, like the Mutant Massacre is considered an event when it was just a 3-issue story arc in Uncanny New Mutants and X Factor.
Yeah, and they didn't even cross over. Like literally, they just all occurred at the same time. None of their characters, like it wasn't like a part 1, part 2, part 3 where it would jump from book to book. Like if you missed X Factor, it didn't matter to read the next issue of Uncanny. There was no, you didn't lose anything from your story. And they managed to do it without making things feel smaller. Whereas you look at, they'll have major events that occur. Like, what was it? Avengers #1 by Jason Aaron. There's celestials falling out of the sky. Not a single other book in the line referenced it.
See, that's a problem.
Reckoning War last week. Slott's Reckoning War #1, which while it was a good book and I actually didn't hate it, it's one of the first Slott things that I didn't dislike in a long time. They blew up the fucking moon in the first issue. Like the actual moon, they blew it up. It is now pieces, and they were all falling to Earth. I guarantee you're not going to see a single reference of it in any book that is not Fantastic Four, which is the only other book that Slott's writing.
Wow, they blew up the moon. That's like huge. That's huge. Like that's like where, you know, obviously everything's supposed to be super dark and, you know, you can't see for shit. And to know that they're doing that, and now you're saying it possibly doesn't affect any other book. Once again, you should be able to like read what happened and then move on over to like Daredevil. And like, hey, look, he's dealing with dark skies over in Hell's Kitchen. How that happened? Go read Reckoning War. Oh my god! See, it makes the stories feel weightless. It makes them feel paper thin.
It does, and it makes the universe feel both small and unimportant.
Yeah. And in some cases, that each book is its own separate universe.
Yeah, and they only. Their universes only come in conflict. Like somehow they only end up in the same universe whenever it's an event time or when they need to make a phone call.
It's just, I just find it funny how with both companies, DC is way more guilty of this, though, in my opinion, how they do something world changing to fix a problem that doesn't exist.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and that started back in the 80s with them.
That's how they solve a problem. They solve a problem by creating another problem, and then that just replaces that problem with another problem.
I mean, don't get me wrong, Crisis on Infinite Earths was a good story, but what problem did it really fix? There, you know, okay, we'll admit at that point DC's continuity was haywire.
Yeah, but it didn't get any better afterwards.
No, it didn't. I mean, I'm also kind of silly in the fact that I did like Infinite Crisis. I thought that was actually a decent story that, again, it fixed the problem they created at that point.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and I also didn't mind the first 52. I thought that was really...
was 52 first or was Countdown first?
I think 52, because Countdown is what led into Final Crisis, if I'm remembering right.
I remember it went issue 1 to 52 and then back down to 1.
Oh yeah, I think it was 52 first, and then Countdown, because Countdown led into I think Countdown is what led into Final Crisis.
Okay.
Which again, I didn't think was a great story, but why make these big changes for what felt like no reason? Oh, we're gonna finally kill Darkseid. Why?
And how does that help your continuity in any way? I got nothing.
I mean, I will admit, in more and more mature years, I guess you could say, I've actually appreciated DC a little bit more, because they do handle they did, they don't anymore, but they were handling certain things, in my opinion, better. They weren't completely throwing shit out the window just cause. I mean, they may not have had a good reason, but they had a reason for it.
Yeah.
You know, and some of their continuities are, again, like I said, haywire. Look at Hawkman over the years.
Oh yeah, but now see, that's the thing. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was just saying to Marby Dog in the chat that even though there are some continuity issues that was happening not as bad at the Rebirth, slightly at the Rebirth, before everything was happening now, Hawkman was a great book. And by issue number 1, Venditti was actually able to make the whole Hawkman problem be not a problem. He actually made it not convoluted. And I would highly stress that you read that 29 issue run. I am in love with it. I've gone back to it a few times, and well, there's a day where a hardcover comes out with all 29 issues. You bet your ass I'm buying it. It's a tragedy that we didn't get at least 50 issues of it, because Venditti and that character went hand in hand. I remember I bought that book just being a skeptic. I'm like, oh, I guess I'll see what's going on here. And boy, did I become a believer.
Got a solo series.
Yeah, well, that in 20 or late 2020, and it started in June 2018, I think. Because trust me when I say I was in on that book, and I was over a lot of books right after Metal, but Hawkman had me. Hawkman had me.
I think that had they managed to keep Brian Hitch cycling back through that book for 6-issue arcs, like 4 to 8 issues at a clip, and then had somebody else come in and be the fill-in artist for a while, and then had Hitch back again. If they would have kept him around for more than what did he do, like 8 to 10 issues?
Hitch did the first 12 issues, and and on 4 or 5 of them he did some of the inks himself, and some of them he even did some of the coloring himself too. And then they had Will Conrad do issue 13, which was a good one-off story. Then I can't remember who they had. They had a story involving the Shadow Thief, which tied into some weird event. You're the Villain. Like, it was able to, like, you could still read it where you didn't have to read You're the Villain, which I actually never did. I didn't care. Like, I was like, You're the Villain doesn't sound interesting. We already had that with Forever Evil years before. So I was like, it just sounded like a repeat. So I just stuck with Hawkman. And then you had Fernando Pasarin. I don't know how it's pronounced. But I really dug what he done. He did the bulk of between issues, I'd say 20 through 29. He did like at least 7 or 8 of them. And I think they had a fill in with one of them. But no, Fernando was killer. Obviously, he's not a star power name like Hitch, but the talent was there from beginning to end. And it also didn't help that they stopped promoting the book after like issue 6. There was no ads for it. There was no talking about it. The only one that was promoting it was, I think, some of the YouTubers like Thinking Critical or like Hawk World on Twitter, very popular page on Twitter and Facebook. But even then, those are just minuscule outlets that are obviously big supporters, but they don't have as much reach as, per se, DC Comics to promote the book.
Yeah. Now, I do have to ask, like, because I never really read it. Hawkman's not a character that I'm a big fan of. How different and how different of a style art-wise did you end up with from Hitch? Now, Hitch obviously is very Alan Davis and Gary Frank inspired. How much different was the other artist? Was it a significant shift?
No, if you're talking Will Conrad, he did issue 13. It was similar but different. It was still colorful, but it was like, I guess you could say, a minor shift. Now, when there was the arc involving the Shadow Thief, it was definitely like they relied a lot on blacks and whites because of obviously the character of the Shadow Thief. So that made sense, but still kind of felt like out of place. It didn't help that it was also tying into You're the Villain as well. And then Pasarin, he was pretty different, but not different like per se to a point where it was like Bendis doing Iron Man. I'm sorry, not Bendis doing Iron Man. What's that guy? Who did Marquez?
David Marquez.
David Marquez did that first arc of Invincible Iron Man, and then they brought in Mike Deodato right after. It wasn't like radical like that, where it felt like a completely different book. You could still feel and recognize the book. It was different enough where you knew it was a different penciler, but you still recognize it as a book. Unlike Invincible Iron Man 2015 for All New, All Different, you had that first Marquez arc, and you thought, okay, this is what the tone of the Iron Man book is going to be. But then comes issue 6 and the rest of the issues, and it's all Deodato, and it reads completely different to a point where you almost feel like you're reading a different comic book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm wondering whether or not the shift away from Hitch really did negatively impact that book to the point where it started. Well, no, I mean sales.
Maybe. Well, it's interesting because I mean I can't remember if it was Hitch or Venditti who said it, but one of them said Hitch was supposed to only be on for the first 4 or 5 issues, so they actually got lucky that they got him for 1 through 12 without skipping a month too. It all came out consistently 1 through 12. There was no break, especially that's God, that's a statistical anomaly in the 21st century for a penciler to put out 12 issues in a row without having a break or a fill-in. Like way back when, obviously that was definitely
you could still get Mark Bagley to do 20 issues in a row.
Well, yeah, he's Bagley. However, we have a beast. much like I mentioned earlier with Ramos and LaRocca, whether you like or don't like their styles is neither here nor there. It's the fact that they can hammer out the books. Obviously, the subject of whether you like him is a subject for another panel, but it's the fact that those type of guys, they all hammer it out, and they're fewer and far between nowadays.
Speaking of Ramos, that's one of the ones that I've always been amused by. Do you remember Cliffhanger Comics, which was an imprint in Wildstorm?
So imprint had its own.
I didn't read it. I knew about it, but I didn't read it.
Cliffhanger had, because it had Crimson by Humberto Ramos. But it also had Battle Chasers from Joe Mad and Danger Girl from J. Scott Campbell. Crimson was the only. It managed to do 30 issues in the time it took the other two to do about 6, and he managed. Ramos even managed to do a second series called Out There, also under the Cliffhanger banner, before both of those other 2 books ended. So he basically managed to do 48 issues in the time that it took one to do 7 and the other to do 9.
Yeah, Jesus. Ramos is a beast. And like I said, I know obviously, and that's definitely a penciler whose art style people are very divided on, but he hammers it out, man. He has no problem missing deadlines. He has no problem doing that. So you got to give credit where it's due. I absolutely
like
do.
Ramos.
I do too.
I like Ramos's art. I don't know if I'm a huge. Go ahead.
I was gonna say my introduction to his art was Spectacular Spider-Man in the early 2000s, like 2003 or 4ish, right around there. Right when there's that second volume. Yeah, he launched that. It was that Venom story.
You know what artist that was on that title that I absolutely love to this day does not even really work in comics anymore. Talent Caldwell. He did 2 issues on that book.
Oh yeah, I forgot all about it. I know exactly what you're talking about. Jesus, dude.
Yeah,
man.
That was I think that's the only Marvel work he ever did.
Not to cut you off there, Doc.
Yeah.
Nick, you got somewhere you got to be?
I do, and I hate it because I'm enjoying this conversation with you guys. But unfortunately,
we will do this again.
I have a higher calling, and I got to assemble with the Dix division. So I see the chat, guys. Obviously, in 13 minutes, we'll be on Comics Division, yelling at parked cars.
You'll be on Comics Division.
I will be. Yes, you'll. So Comics Division.
I'll be going to bed
unless Comics decides to get froggy tonight and have me on.
Sir Talks a Lot, George the Giant Slayer, yours truly. That's what we do.
Casino.
Tomorrow night. Oh yeah, God, have Culture Casino. Tomorrow night, we'll be doing Toxic Tuesday, Varsity Blues, and then Friday night, we'll be having our comic shop talk. And I've also got a few Mickey Mouse voice impression videos coming out. Stay tuned for those. They're gonna be hilarious, they're gonna be funny, and they're gonna be redonkulous. Doc, dude, if you are ever open, man, I do a comic shop panel on Friday nights. It's kind of just like the guys hang out, discussing stuff like comic shop, except on YouTube. I don't know what time you're on, but I'm on Central. I'm just saying, if you ever want to come on, we just kind of it's a very chill stream, guys shooting the shit.
Where I got my first break.
Yeah, that's how I broke in Piers. All I'm saying is I'd love to have you on if you're ever open to it.
Oh, I'm down for it. Depends on whether or not the girlfriend has anything planned for us that weekend. But Yeah, I'm down. If we don't have any, if I don't have anything to do, fuck it. I'm game. I mean, I don't own a
Okay.
comic shop, but
Yeah.
No, it's not.
whatever.
It's not comic shop owners, but people
Oh.
like hanging in the comic
It's
shop.
like we're hanging
yeah,
out at
yeah.
a shop. Like we'll
Word.
have like panels. We'll discuss like like best super villain, or like last week we did a panel on defending the Inhumans, and in March we're dedicating the entire month. We're gonna cover issues ASM 1 through 20 of the original Lee and Ditko run. Each episode will be 1 through
Nice.
5, 6 through 10, 11 through 15. And all I'm saying is I'd love to have you on. Obviously, you know your
I would
stuff,
love
and you're
that.
okay. Well, I guess we'll be in chat, dude.
Yeah, definitely.
All
Hit
right.
me up, brother.
I will. All right, take care, Imperatus. I'll see you. All right,
Sir. Thanks again for coming
all
on,
right,
brother.
guys. Yeah, thank you.
All right, take care, Nick.
So, but yeah, his comic stream's really chill. I had a great time when I was on it.
Rad.
Um,
I love that kind of sometimes a little bit chill, but sometimes a little bit like antagonistic.
mhm.
I don't know. I don't.
It's
care
how guys
what
talk
it
to
is.
each other.
Yes, as long as it's dudes busting each other's balls,
Mhm.
I don't really give a shit.
That's one of the things I've always said to myself, or said to people. It's like, yeah, you'll know when I like you if I bust your balls. If I don't talk to you at all,
Yeah.
Eric, how you doing? Thanks for joining us. Keto
Oh,
Simple,
hey,
same
Eric.
as you. Thank you very
All
much.
right, brother. Eric, it's wonderful to see you. And dude, did you read his Arc Athena?
No, I
Oh.
heard about it though. That good, huh?
It's really, really, really good. I think
I'll have to put that on my list then.
I think he's done with fulfillment for the crowdfund, and
Mhm.
I think other issue. I think it's about to be, if it's not already,
Nice.
available on Iconic Comics website.
Okay.
It was public, it's being distributed and published through. I don't know if it's published through Iconic, but however it works out, he's
right.
working with Iconic.
Gotcha.
But dude, it is like the exact opposite of modern comics. It is like ultra compression.
Nice.
There is so much story that happens in 40 pages. It would take like a normal comic, like I don't know, a year.
I mean, one of my favorite mangas is very bad about that. So it'd be nice having something compressed. I'm a big fan of Berserk.
I'm not much of a manga guy, but it took me. I read through it once and I'm like, this is really good, but it feels so weird. And then like I realized I had to re-engage that like old school like 80s, 90s comic way that you read comics back then. I had to re-engage my brain like that. And I'm like, oh my God, this is what I've been missing.
Yeah. Okay. I'll definitely have to check that out then. Like I said, I've been catching up. I was a big fan of Berserk, but I'm also trying to catch up on certain mecha mangas. With mecha stuff is always interesting to read because it's something you'd think of seeing in like an animated format, especially considering like the generation we grew up with. How many giant robot cartoons did we grow up with?
Oh yeah, I mean, we had Voltron, had Transformers,
GoBots.
GoBots. Then a little later, when we were early to mid-teens, Power Rangers.
I was already like in high school for that.
Yeah, I was too. I was like right at the beginning of high school, but it was still there. And it was still in the like.
So,
but then we had Gundam. And that had started getting big,
and that's actually some of the stuff I've been reading. Is there's quite a number of Gundam stories that are canon that are not animated. They're either in a video game. There's a lot of those.
Okay,
especially during the PS1 and PS2 eras, and a little bit into the PS3 era of consoles. They're not doing it so much anymore. But then a lot of stuff was manga, like Gundam F90 was a manga short story. One of the most popular Gundam designs. Crossbone Gundam, which has got a pirate motif to it.
Okay.
Because it's part of a space pirate group. So they really kind of, hit the nail on the head with that.
Yeah, little
on the nose.
Yeah, a little on the nose there. But hey, I mean,
but it's one of the most popular designs that I'm aware of, and no animation. It's only in video games and manga. And it's like the manga story is something like maybe 12 volumes, and it's like 3 different stories.
Oh God.
Yeah, so it's not like it's a lot.
Yeah, see, I liked I think I think my first real exposure to Gundam
It
was
was probably
on, like,
Wing
Yeah, it was Gundam Wing.
on Toonami. That was that like that for a
Yes.
lot of people.
And then Endless Waltz.
Mhm.
And then I tried watching Mobile Suit Gundam.
It's rough because the animation and the art is so old.
It was, and all of the olive green. Everything was that military olive green.
Yeah, there was a lot of that with the Xeon designs at that time.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you had
I'm
the one guy Char, who always piloted a red suit. It's like, wow, that's not clashing at all.
yeah. And it didn't feel like, I'm like, I can't tell any of them apart.
Right.
So I don't know. I couldn't get that hard into it. Whereas like Wing,
Right.
it kind of hit that Voltron.
Mhm. I can see that
feel for me because
Well,
they were all different colors.
The big thing about the Gundam universe is there's actually one continuous timeline and then a whole bunch of separate universes.
That's what I've heard.
And Wing is one of the separate universes. That's why it feels so self-contained.
Okay.
Mobile Suit Gundam is the start of what they refer to as the Universal Century timeline.
All right.
So, original Mobile Suit Gundam, Gundam 0080, War in the Pocket, 0083, Stardust Memories. The reason why they're called 0080 and 0083, those are the years they take place.
Okay.
Because the original Gundam takes place in the year 0079.
Okay.
Then you had Zeta Gundam, Double Zeta Gundam, Mobile Suit Gundam Char's Counterattack, Gundam Unicorn, Gundam Narrative.
Oh, we're into
It's all one timeline. Those are all the main ones. I didn't even really talk about a couple of the other side stories like 8th MS Team or
oh god, yeah, you're at this point I'm like, wait, where's what's number 2?
Yeah. And a lot of it, like from the original Gundam all the way up to the Char's Counterattack, they're still dealing with the stuff that happened in the original Gundam.
Oh, and like Mobile Suit.
Yeah, the original Mobile Suit Gundam.
Yeah. And I'm like, I want to start from the beginning, but then I'm like, wait, how does this fit with that? And why does it not feel like the same? I don't know.
Because they're not.
Yeah, because they're not. Apparently, that's the thing that I didn't understand for the last 20 years.
Well, that's the other thing, too. If you go watch something like Mobile Fighter G Gundam, which is so completely and absolutely over the top with their designs, and the way the whole story shakes out, you're like, yeah, I can see how that does not tie into the original one at all. Let's see. The storyline behind that one is every so many years, the leader of planet Earth has decided on Gundam battles. And every country would have their own representative.
Okay. I saw Pacific Rim too.
Kind of like that. Except the Japanese are not politically correct in the 90s at all. So the Gundam representative from Mexico is called Tequila Gundam.
All right.
Wearing a sombrero.
I am definitely already down for this. And
poncho. And looked like it was made out of a cactus in parts. Like the shoulder armors were green with spikes coming off of it like a cactus. I don't remember what the Canadian one looked like a lumberjack.
Did he have a hockey stick?
No, but he had like the black and red plaid design on his chest, if I recall correctly. The Netherlands representative was made out of a windmill. So imagine a windmill with a Gundam head and arms.
I was going to ask, does he wear clogs too?
They didn't go that far.
Like wooden shoes?
The Norwegian one was half Viking boat.
All right. I'm actually down with this.
Horned helmet included. Like, wow.
German one have like a fucking
no, that one actually looked like a normal Gundam.
I was gonna say it was just drunk all the time.
The British one looked like it was a Queen's Guard, like with the tall poofy hat,
bad teeth.
Yeah, actually had like its weapon looked like a musket with a bayonet, even though it shot laser beams.
But did the French one just surrender the minute it?
No, but it had a Napoleonic hat, and its major attack involved flowers.
Okay, was it always commanded by a non-Frenchman too?
No, he was French, but he was kind of a badass. Actually,
okay, because that's the only way they win.
Yeah,
no. Otherwise, they
capitulate. You know,
especially if it has a German accent, then they really quit.
you know, the American one was a part boxer / football player combination.
Sounds about right, and probably
So
wore a cowboy hat. And
no, they actually Getter Robo did that one.
All right.
Another good mecha series, manga and anime wise. And there's a character called Texas Mac, and it's the American version, and it's like looks literally like a cowboy down to the hat, the poncho, rides.
Is he wearing chaps?
He might actually, and then
Nice.
has rides a mechanical horse.
I want to see the fat American Gundam with like a cheeseburger in one hand, a gun in the other hand,
and the
a
best
cowboy hat on.
The best part of the one series Texas Mac is in, which is Shin Getter versus Neo Getter.
Okay,
is they're being attacked by this aliens or like one of the various villains from the Getter Robo series. The guy pulls a chain that's on the lawn of the White House, and out of one of like the like out from the ground in front of the White House, this big mecha-sized anti-ship caliber sniper rifle pops out.
All right,
it's like wow,
like
really?
I would have been fun. It would have been a little funnier if he pulled the chain and like Abraham Lincoln's statue comes to life and starts punching aliens.
Yeah, you know, with some of the mecha series out there, I wouldn't be surprised if something like that would ever happen.
And his real power is he just grabs the Washington Monument and stabs things with it.
Right. I mean, I've noticed things in anime and manga because I've been reading it and watching it for decades now, that they might get into something. Like, for example, for a period of time, mecha anime got real fucking emo.
Okay.
And that started with Neon Genesis Evangelion. For a while there, every series that came out, it felt like that wasn't an already established property. Like Gundam had to get on like this existential crisis. And, you know, is it really a good thing? Is it really a good thing what I'm doing, piloting this robot and so on and so forth? In the words of Mr. Medic or Shinji, get on the fucking mech.
Yeah, like there was a lot of like the boy and giant robot variety genre from it.
Whereas they did delve into that, and they still do that to a degree, that's not all they're doing anymore. American comics, when they get into something,
that's all they do.
That's all they do, and it takes forever for them to want to not do it anymore.
Well,
if ever.
I vaguely remember, what was it? The Big O.
Yes, that series was
another one.
Great.
Yeah, where dude had a really dope car, and
the art style is very reminiscent of Batman the animated series.
Yes, it was like basically he was Batman with a mech suit.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I can get into this one.
That was very well done. It's just funny too. It's me mentioning Batman the animated series, how Marvel seems to handle the movies fine.
They can't
Everything
do
else
animation for shit,
right? Or TV.
Yeah.
DC can't do movies worth of shit.
Yeah.
Can't do TV worth of shit.
Well, they're batting about 50-50 on that. They've got, you have Superman and Lois, which is going well. You had the first 5 seasons of Arrow, the first 4 seasons of Flash.
Yeah, the first couple seasons of Flash I didn't mind, actually.
The first season of Supergirl wasn't bad.
I heard Stargirl wasn't terrible either.
Stargirl wasn't bad for the first season. I kind of tapped out in the middle of the second season.
Gotcha.
People seem to like it. They seem to say it was better than the first one, but I was like, I am so bored.
Right.
And then Legends of Tomorrow had its moments.
Right.
There was a couple of seasons.
Constantine I enjoyed. I don't think that was CW though.
No, it wasn't, but he went over to Legends.
Right. I thought that guy played one of the best live action John Constantines. Yeah. I mean, I hate to admit it, I didn't dislike the Keanu Reeves movie.
Yeah, but Matt Ryan actually reminded you.
He looks like him.
He looks like him. He acts like him. He's much more of a smug asshole.
Mm-hmm. Whereas the
Warren
Keanu Reeves movie,
Ellis.
He was just an asshole.
Yeah, he's Warren Ellis in the Constantine show, and then in Legends of Tomorrow, he's Keanu Reeves as a dickhead in in the Constantine movie.
Right.
But no, so they're batting about 50-50.
Okay. But their animated movies have all been pretty damn good. There's been a couple that I was just like,
I've heard some of the recent ones are
they're starting to peter out. Like,
yeah.
I was not a fan of the second Justice League Dark movie, The Apocalypse War.
Well, I think Paul Dini and Bruce Timm aren't involved anymore.
And then the recent JSA one, and I like the JSA a lot for some reason. I'm not sure why, but I do. And one, I didn't like the art style. It reminded me of Archer, and I like Archer, but one of the things I'm not, the art style is not what makes me a fan of that show.
No, it's
the dialogue.
Yeah, it's H. John Benjamin and a lot of that dialogue.
But this had that same real thick, heavy outline.
Okay. And
it just wasn't, I don't know, the story didn't do it for me.
Yeah, I could not get that into that.
But you have classics like Under the Red Hood.
Yeah, I've heard good things. I have that sitting on my media server to watch.
I highly recommend it. It's really good.
I mean, here's my problem. I don't think I will ever like an animated Batman movie as much as I liked
Mask of the Phantasm.
Phantasm, yeah. I don't think it's possible for me to, and I feel like everyone up after that has been a disappointment. The closest thing was Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker.
That got a little dark too for that series, which was kind of like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that.
Batman Beyond in general did get really, really dark.
In some cases, yes.
Yeah, that show got fairly dark. But
the problem is it didn't always have the quality behind it.
No, it didn't. And sometimes it looked like they were really being strapped for budget.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I don't think, I think anything that's not Batman the Animated Series, Batman Beyond the Animated Series, Mask of the Phantasm, and Return of the Joker feel like they're all trying to live up to something that they're not capable of.
I can see that. I don't agree with you on that, at least as far as Under the Red Hood goes. That was just very well done.
I haven't watched it, so I'll take your word for that one.
I also enjoy it too from the same time period. That stuff you mentioned was the Superman animated show was good.
You know what? It was so disappointing that it only got maybe one season.
I think it got like 2.
Okay, yeah,
maybe 3.
I think the problem with that show was airing its schedule. It never aired it like in a consistent way.
Yes,
you get a new episode of Batman the Animated Series every week, and then you'd be watching, and then it would follow up with an episode of Superman the Animated Series that was the repeat of what you watched last week.
Right. And then the Justice League cartoon that they did was also quite well done.
Yeah, then it was Justice League and then Justice League United, right?
Unlimited.
Oh, Unlimited.
And which was great about Unlimited is they started bringing in a lot more of the, not even other main characters from the JLA, but a lot of secondary ones.
Yeah, you started seeing the characters that you were always kind of waiting for to show up.
Like Green Arrow has a few episodes. Black Canary has a couple.
Yeah.
I can't remember the character's name. He's kind of like an Iron Man type character.
Steel?
Not Steel.
I'm not much of a DC guy. So.
Yeah, in this animated world, probably even in the comics, he's Stargirl's stepfather or something like that, or uncle.
Stripe.
Yeah, he had an episode or two. Shining Knight got some screen time.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so did there was a couple episodes I think I recall with Jonah Hex.
Okay.
So
I do remember the Jonah Hex episodes actually.
There was, they actually tapped into Dr. Fate, got a couple episodes. So they in the Unlimited part, because the first part, the Justice League was just, the main crew: Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern.
Yeah, that was the original Justice League series, and then
went into Unlimited.
Yeah,
And they based that off of one of the animated movies.
Oh, okay.
The Justice League, I think it's called Doom, where
yeah.
Vandal Savage, hacks into Batman's computer and sees that he's got plans to incapacitate. All that led into Justice League Unlimited.
Okay.
Because they were like, we need to have more people in the league.
Yeah.
If it's just us, we could all get compromised at some point.
Okay.
So we need to expand the roster to make it harder to pin us down.
Yeah. That would make sense. That would justify the expansion of the series.
But Unlimited was very, very, very good.
Yeah.
Because it showed you a bunch of these secondary and tertiary characters. So don't want to keep you for much longer. I know you're a busy man. Got to get up for in the AM.
I get up stupid early.
I appreciate you being on tonight. This was a great conversation. I had a feeling you and me would get along rather brilliantly.
This is dope, and I definitely want to do this again.
Oh, absolutely, dude. Absolutely. We'll have to do this again. There's some other people I'd like to try to get on at some point. Would love to have a conversation with Razor Fist about comics.
Oh,
let him
dude that I don't think I've ever really talked to.
Have him plug his pulp stuff as well, because that's some brilliant shit.
All right. I'm down.
See if we can't get Pele on here. Get some
horror
comics talking.
Yes, horror comics or just general comic collecting.
I appreciate his takes as he's in the industry, so to speak. As a shop owner, and he's been a fan for as long as he's been. So,
and he's like, I mean, dude is an investor when it comes to comics. I consider myself like a small whale. That dude blows me away.
Some of the stuff he's talked about, I'm like, oh wow.
I'm like, wait, you bought a what?
I forgot one of the last episodes he was on with Aficionados. He was talking about cracking, or it was maybe it was Slabbed and Raw, where he's talking about cracking open something like, like a Batman number 22 or something like that. Like,
oh yeah.
What?
Yeah, and he's talking about I'm gonna crack it and press it. I'm like, no.
You do you, buddy.
Yeah, I would be terrified to touch that book. And I mean, I owned an AF-15. I'd be terrified to touch that.
Yeah, really. But we'll definitely have to do this again soon. Hopefully, you'll be on Nick's channel at some point in the near future. That's a great time. I think your input and knowledge would go well with that crew.
All right, I am definitely down, and thank you for having me on, man.
No problem.
Great conversation, sir.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, I may not know a lot about some things, but I know something about a lot of things.
Oh, I'm the same way. There's certain things that I'm very, very knowledgeable about, and then there's a lot of things that I readily admit my ignorance on.
Like I'm I can talk people silly about Gundam and or video games, for example. I've been a gamer for as long as I can remember.
Well, I appreciate the Gundam lesson, because normally when people start talking about like anime, my eyes start fucking glazing over,
because they don't give you any explanation behind it. They just give you a synopsis, and you're like, okay. And why'd that happen? Why'd that happen?
And no, but you actually explained it in a way that made sense in my brain, and I'm like, oh, this is actually interesting and makes sense. Good.
And
now
as you mentioned in the back room, we'll have a conversation at some point, and I will definitely do you a Gunpla.
Oh, that'd be dope,
once the shortages stop.
Yes,
because that hobby's been getting slammed by this.
I have heard that.
It's not been fun.
All right, man.
So appreciate you being on, guys in the chat who are still here. Appreciate you checking us out. Joining me for my inaugural stream. Expect bigger and better things coming in the future. Me and Nick have some stuff planned. I'm in talks with a couple other people. If you like the sound of my dulcet voice, you can also check me out usually on YetiCast's game streams. A lot of times I'm gaming with him and Mad Mardigan and Mr. Grant Gregory. All kinds of shenanigans happen there. Other than that, you'll tend to find me lurking in various stream chats, and you can find me on Twitter at Imperatus9. Doc, is there anything you want to plug before we head out?
No, I mean, if you guys want to stop by Saturday mornings, have some adult Saturday morning cartoon, old school nerd talk shit, where we mostly just talk comics, and as well as the absurdity of the comics industry these days, over on Wes's channel, Thinking Critical. And otherwise, I just kind of show up very rarely on somebody else's channel.
Well, thanks again for joining me tonight. Thanks again to the chat. Everybody's been awesome. And I will talk to you soon, and you'll be hearing more from me in the very near future.
Later, everybody.